What would it be like to be a political prisoner for your belief in freedom and democracy? Most Americans really have no idea what it would be like to be under that sort of tyrannical rule. Today's guests will be an eye-opening revelation and tell us about what is going on in the world from a perspective of people who have really lived it. Welcome to the Tenpenny Files, everyone. My name is Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, and I'm your host. If it matters to your body, your freedom, or your future, we talk about it on this show. There's something new here every day. Please join us daily. We talk about politics, history, archaeology, travel, food and farming, and of course, health and health policy. And once a week, we have a conversation with pastors and authors who write about faith and biblical principles. Join me here every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Tenpenny Files to hear from voices who've often been ignored, censored, or silenced. And one last thing before we begin today's episode, please consider becoming a Tenpenny Prime member. You can go to primembership.drtenpenny.com, primembership.drtenpenny.com, learn all about the benefits, and hopefully join and support our work. And one last thing, welcome to our regulars. We're so glad you're here. And welcome to the new people who've just found our show. We are so grateful that you're here, and we hope that you'll join us regularly. Now, let's get started. Today's conversation is a little bit different than our regular author interviews. One of the reasons for this show is to bring you information that has been suppressed or silenced. Today we have two guests, Homeira Hesami and Shirin Nariman, two women who as teenagers became political prisoners and were brutalized for pro-democracy activities in Iran. Homeira and Shirin, thank you so much for joining me here today. It's such a pleasure to be able to have this conversation with both of you at the same time. So, Homeira,
Thank you for having us.
you're
Thank you.
welcome. You're welcome. Homeira, let's start with you and your story. You were imprisoned when you were 16 years old and spent a month in solitary confinement and were one of the youngest prisoners. Tell us a little bit about your story. Why were you arrested and what happened on your journey?
Yes, I was arrested at 16 because I was with a group of people that they were mostly involved with the MEK, the main Iranian opposition. And we were just doing research. We weren't really too political, at least myself wasn't too much involved in politics. I just wanted to research and know what's going on. You know, that was a revolution just took place. The people overthrew the Shah back in 1979. So this was just a few years after that. So everybody was eager to know more and find its place in the society. And that's what we were doing, you know. And I was already graduated by 16. And so the regime thought that our group are involved, our group is involved, you know, with the MEK. So they arrested us. And in prison, I realized that the only entity and the only organization that the regime is afraid of is actually the MEK. So I wasn't too fond of the group because I thought that you have to do research and change the people's mind. But in prison, I realized that no, this is not the case. You know, the regime is really afraid of the organized resistance and the MEK. So I was released a few months later, but that was the experience that I guess I took with me, and to this day is still valid. So the MEK is the main Iranian opposition, is the first enemy of the Iranian regime.
Shireen, I guess you were actually the youngest prisoner at 15 years of age when you were one of the youngest, you were the youngest political prisoner. Tell us your story. How did you end up in prison and what was that experience like?
So my experience is a little bit different. After revolution, about a year and a half, we had semi-democracy in Iran. And that was when everybody was exposed to different options, different groups. And I immediately, also because of my own cousin, I was attracted to Mujahideen Khalq, MEK. I knew, I loved the way that they were treating women, and, giving personality and giving authority to even young girls. And they were very progressive entity. And that's what I loved about them. And I got involved with them. I was their supporter, and I was arrested at home a year and a half after the revolution, just because we were too active, too much support for MEK. And then, unfortunately, in prison, not only I was subject to tortures myself, but also I had to witness so many of the friends and people that I met in prison, their tortures, and also taking them for executions. So very quickly, I had to grow up, learn how to survive, and also the promises that I made to every single person, every single cellmates or friends who were taken for executions. I promised them that I never forget, and I will continue until Iran is free. And it is my passion. I want to see Iran is finally free, and no one has to go through what we went through. And also, this is something that is happening right now. Every single day, the Iranian regime hangs one person, and because myself, I was taken twice for executions, so I know the feeling. For me, every day it looks like that I'm getting killed. I'm taken for executions, and I feel every minute of it. And it's been a big, I guess, a dilemma for me, but also a big motivation for continuing the fight and fight until no one else in Iran would suffer that and should go through what we went through or what people are going through right now.
So so for the audience, what does MEK stand for?
MEK is Mujahideen Khalq. It's a group that it's a very popular group, especially after revolution. They were people who were fighting against the Shah as well, and people knew many of their members that were prosecuted by the regime, by the Shah's regime. Especially, there was a young man named Mehdi Rezai, who was at the time of his execution, he was 19. And he had a open, it was broadcasted to people, his trial. And people start hearing him and learning about him. And I remember, although I was very young, I think maybe I was 10, 11, I don't remember when, but I remember when they were showing his trial, the whole family and everyone was just mesmerized by him. His charisma and the way he talked and his bravery, because even at that time, this is the time that people were afraid to speak out at all during Shah, because his secret service Savak was very powerful, and as soon as you would say something, you would be arrested and you would end up in prison. So that's why it was amazing to see a 19-year-old is yelling back and is fighting and is talking about his ideology, and he's talking about his tortures. So I think those had impacted my life all along. And now this is a fight that we started 60 years. It's been 60 years that the Iranian people this organization, MEK, is fighting for the regime, for democracy, sovereignty, and a Republic of Iran. And that's what MEK stands. And still, to this day, there are members of MEK that have been executed in past 40 days. 8 people, 8 men were hanged in Iran because of their membership, being a member of MEK Mujahideen Khalq.
Wow.
And if I may add, if I, I was
Please.
telling you that in the present, I realized that the MEK was the main enemy. The other acronym for MEK is the People Mujahideen Organization of Iran, so PMOI. So sometimes you may see PMOI or MEK, Mujahideen Khalq acronym, but they refer to the group that Shirin was mentioned, that it was founded in 1964, I believe, and they stood against the Shah's regime because the Shah's regime, limited all the social freedom. So there was only one party that was in charge. So all other parties were banned. And so there was a whole story. But this group, by the time that the revolution took place in 1979, there were only, I think they had 200 members or sympathizers, and most of them were in prison by that time because Shahs had all of them in prison. And the people, ironically, that they were free were the mullahs that they were able to take over later on and kind of stole the revolution. But anyhow, there were only 200 members, but because their ideology was very progressive and very, I mean, they believed in gender equality, a lot of women and a lot of youth and a lot of university students, were attracted to them. So they became one of the largest groups that expanded. There were like other groups that they were from the Shah's time, like Chirikai Fadai, and then there were other new groups that formed because when you have a political freedom, everybody's willing to express, get together, do something, and advertise for their ideology. So there were a lot of other groups that they formed during that 2.5 years that they were kind of semi-freedom in Iran. But the MEK was one of the largest one. And they were able to stand Khomeini's atrocities. By June of 1981, when Khomeini banned all political parties and said, whoever is against me, they have to, you have to kill them. So a lot of them were just dissolved or faded, or they just like separated. Like, one group became like 2 or 3 groups, but MEK was the only one that stood firm. And they staged a political rally, a peaceful rally on June 20th, 1981, that in Tehran alone, which Tehran back then had 4 million population, there were 500,000 protesting peacefully.
Wow.
And this is not the opposition's statistic, it's the regime's newspaper that they put that one. So Khomeini, at the time, the supreme leader, realized that if these 500,000 people, they were marching toward his place, if they get there, so this, we just went through a revolution like 3 years earlier. So the people were willing to, topple because it was their right. It was their God-given right, to have their own government. So they wanted to topple Khomeini. But Khomeini at the time said that whoever is in, ordered fire. We just had like in January uprisings, we see how the government kill people. So that was pretty much similar at that time. So people were arrested. They didn't even know their names. They killed them. So it was just like a lot of chaos. But the fact about, what MEK, I guess is popular right now is that they withstood, all this pressure. There were thousands of them were in prison. In 1988, the regime didn't know what to do with these political prisoners. They wouldn't change their mind. They wouldn't recant from their political belief, and because it was freedom. They wanted freedom and democracy for their country. So what did Khomeini did? Khomeini made a decree, a religious decree, and ordered whoever is loyal to their group, like to the MEK, you can kill them. So even if they were sentenced to like 5 years, to 10 years, to whatever, they were sentenced to death. And that's what the massacre of 1988 happened, that over 30,000 political prisoners, that mostly, they mainly, were belonging to the MEK, more than 90% of them, they were killed, they were executed. And the regime wanted to wipe off MEK, but it didn't. So, and that's what, it really attracts me to them, because they are a very dynamic group. They're not just something that have an ideology and they follow a book. No, they are dynamic, they adapt themselves, they're very progressive, and they have expanded, even though the regime killed 30,000 of them. No, they're expanding, and the regime was always trying to call them like a small group, grouplet. To this date, it was saying that the grouplet of the MEK. And they even use a pseudonym for them, the Hippocrat. And they've been like the name of the MEK is banned inside Iran. So it is like their
is that political party, the MEK, is that still like the revolutionary and opposition to the current regime? Is it still in existence and growing? And that's what the majority of Iranian people who are against the current regime are behind?
Well, they are certainly are here, and we are still supporting them. They are part of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, And I have to tell you that the National Council of Resistance of Iran is led by a woman, a Muslim woman, Maryam Rajavi, and she has the very great vision and for the future of Iran, and she had come up with a 10-point plan for the future of Iran, and also during the in February 28th, she announced the formation of the provisional government in Iran. So MEK is one of the members of National Council of Resistance, and they are still very strong. I should let you know that the top management and the top people that are in charge, they're all women. So that shows the equality that you want to see, that if an organization means what they talk about is MEK, because all their top management are women, and they are the decision makers, and they are the ones that are leading the opposition and day to day political and other aspects of an organization and opposition. They are the ones that are the decision makers and leading it. So they're still there, and we are learning more and more that in Iran they are gaining huge popularity, because people, after all these years, they see that the only organization that is still there and still it's fighting, and the regime still is afraid of them, is MEK, Mujahideen Khalq. That's why they execute their members, because they are afraid of anyone who stands up to them, and that is the popularity of the MEK.
So in really brief, for the Americans who are listening to this who don't know much about, Iranian history that goes back thousands of years, back to the Babylonian days and Mesopotamia and the breadbasket of the world, really. Tell us what it was like before the Shah took over. And is that the type of society that you're aspiring to return to, or is it something different?
Well, we're looking for something completely different, because remember, I was born during Shah, during the
Okay.
monarchy, but we had the constitutional revolution over 100 years ago, that there were Iranians who fought for semi democracy in Iran, and they tried very hard. It's been more than 100 years that we are fighting for our sovereignty, for freedom, democracy. So during the Shah, yes, you had some freedom, like the way you dress up. But one thing was very, very clear: you could not whatsoever criticize the system, the government, and particularly the Shah, the king of Iran, the monarch. And that's why we had a lot of political prisoners. And that's why during the Shah, he commissioned the groups to build new prisons in Tehran, which is the capital, just the surrounding it in 1975. And that was, ironically, the same prison was used by the regime to hold thousands and thousands of the political prisoners, and much of the 1988 massacre, unfortunately, happened in that prison. So, unfortunately, we didn't have freedom during the Shah, and also during this regime. It's more than a century that our people are fighting for freedom, democracy, republic of Iran. We want to have a republic. We want every 4 years people go to choose their leader. We are done with one man show, one person sits and make the decision. During the Shah he would choose his prime minister, not even election. He would choose, he would appoint someone as his prime minister. And during this regime, the supreme leader, he would pick 2 or 3 people and to tell people, you have to choose between one of them as the president of Iran. So both of them were the same. That's why we are saying no to Shah, no to mullahs. We are saying we are rejecting both systems, and we are fighting for a free, democratic, non-nuclear Republic of Iran.
Very good.
If I mean, I don't know if I have time or we're gonna
No,
go
keep
for
going.
break.
We've got about 5 more minutes before the break.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the problem with monarchy, sometimes some people say that, oh, there was like some freedom, and then there's like monarchy in Europe, there's like England, Norway, there all those countries have monarchy. So the Iranian people want to go back to monarchy, but that's not the case. The people rejected monarchy in 1979. And as we said, that the problem with monarchy is not that it's similar to like, Norway or England, that the king doesn't get involved in politics. The problem in that Middle East has been that we have tried, historically, the Iranian people tried to limit the power of the king. So the constitutional revolution in the early 1900s was just for that purpose, to limit the power of the king and give it to the parliament, the people's representatives. But of course, it didn't work. Then we go to 1953, which Mossadegh, the prime minister, was in charge and was trying to like nationalize the oil and leave king out of it. But there was a coup against him, against Mossadegh. So then after that, all the powers were consolidated in one person. So if the king that is supposed to be out of politics, does all decision making, then all the people surrounding him are going to be just saying yes to him. And that's the issue. So historically, we have tried, like the Iranian people have tried to limit the power of monarch. It didn't work. So in 1979, they rejected it. So I know that there is in the Western media, there is Reza Pahlavi, the son of deposed monarch Mohammad Reza, is coming back and says that I want to bring democracy and the people want monarchy. But that's not the case. When we say we, it's not that we want it, it's just the people in Iran. We know the regime has used a lot of tactics to get people away from the MEK, the main organized opposition. You were asking if the majority of people are supporting. I would say the majority of people maybe don't even know about the MEK in Iran, because the regime has kept them in a distance. But the majority of people want the same goal as MEK, which is the freedom, democracy, and they're willing to pay the price. So right now, the strategy of the MEK, which was armed struggle, and that was established in 1981 by forming, after the June 20th, they realized that you cannot talk with this regime in political means. So you have to kind of do the armed struggle to overthrow the regime. And that's the strategy that it's been embraced by the Iranian youth, regardless if they know, too involved in MEK, they're following the same thing, and they are attracting to it because this is the organized force, that there is like a container, for you, there is an organization for you to join and do the same thing that, this is like obvious. You have to have this regime is not going to go out with like on its own. So you have to force them out. And that's where the people, are there to force the ruling, mullahs out. But there is no way that they want to go back to the pre-revolution just because the women didn't have to cover their hair. No, there wasn't any social freedom. People didn't revolt, just for the covering. As a matter of fact, Reza Shah, which is the grandfather or the first Pahlavi monarch, forced people to take their scarf out. So the problem with, stuff is forcing, you have to have a choice. You want to cover your hair or don't cover your hair. That should be your choice. You don't force people in or out of something. And that's the issue with monarchy and with this current theocracy. So that's the issue. And, I just wanted your audience to know that just because some media, they try to glorify the Shah's time because people had mini skirt on and they didn't have to cover their hair. That's not the social freedom we're talking about. That's not the economic I mean, this disparity, economic disparity, was huge during Shah's time. Iran was a very rich country with the oil price skyrocketing. People were just poor, so they had to sell their blood to survive. So we had all those stuff in. Just because the regime killed more than the Shah's time and the economy is worse than that time, you don't just say that Shah's time was good and so let's go back to it. That's not the way history goes. The history rejected monarchy, and the people of Iran looking forward to a republic, just because the republic is a manifestation of the government of the people, by the people, of the people. So it's for that reason that monarchy is not a government of the people for the people. So monarchy in history of Iran is just one person show in charge.
That's why these conversations are so important, because America is so isolated. We're over across the pond. We're in a country all by ourselves. Yes, we've got Canada and Mexico below us, but very minimal. Only the people on the borders know much about that. And unless you actively take an interest in other places. But then when you go to Europe and you've got all these languages and all these cultures that go back thousands of years, and you go to the Middle East and you've got more of that. And what we see in the news here may not have any basis in reality of what the people who were there actually lived. So telling that story is so compelling and so important. I want to let that sink in for just a minute as we take a quick station break here. Hold that thought, because that's very, very important for our listeners and for people here in America to know. We've got more to talk about that. Hold that thought. We're going to take a short break from our sponsors on AmericaOutloud.news. America Out Loud Talk Radio plays the Tenpenny Files on the iHeartRadio every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. If you've missed any of these great conversations, you can find the Tenpenny Files on Spotify, Pandora, Apple, TuneIn, and other places, including all of our social media sites on Instagram, X, Rumble, and YouTube. But the best place to find it is to go to our website at drtenpenny.com, hover over the podcast tab, and you'll see a drop-down window that says all podcasts. We made it really easy for you to find us. We're also on our Substacks, which is drtenpenny.substack.com, and Dr. Tenpenny and tenpennywalkwithgod.substack.com. We have a great message coming up from our sponsors. Please support them because they support us. Sit tight. We will be right back with more from two women from Iran who, as teenagers, became political prisoners, and they're telling the truth about the boots on the ground in Iran and what the future of Iran that they're hoping to build. We will be right back. People are doing everything right these days. They're eating clean and trying to avoid toxins, and they're still not feeling well. That's because they no longer can avoid exposure. You can't avoid it. Toxins are everywhere. Things like glyphosate, heavy metals like aluminum and mercury, cadmium from cigarette smoke, they're all accumulating in your body every single day. And that buildup shows up as brain fog, fatigue, weight that won't budge, skin issues, gut problems, ADD and ADHD in our children, asthma in our kids, even accelerated aging. Detox is no longer optional. It's something your body needs to do every day. We recommend as a first step this detox spray because it works at a cellular level to bind and remove toxins from the body. It's safe for the whole family, from infants to grandparents. I even give it to my dog. Go to drtdetox.com and get started today. First-time customers can get up to 82% off on your first bottle because exposures aren't slowing down and your health shouldn't either. In fact, you should be getting well. The wellness blanket is one of my favorite things to have in my house. I sleep with it every night. I travel with it. I put it in my suitcase because it's not just a blanket. It actually acts as a protective medical device. It blocks out EMFs while it's helping you to sleep. You will sleep so well with this. You get into a deep sleep, and it really changes the pH in your chemistries in your body. It's something that you will want to have forever, not only for yourself, but for the rest of your family. Go to thewellnessblanket.com and use the affiliate code DRT10 to get 10% off on your purchase. Well, welcome back, everyone. Today's conversation is with Homeira Hesami and Shirin Nariman, two women who, as teenagers, became political prisoners and were brutalized by pro-democracy for their pro-democracy activities on Iran. Ladies, welcome back to the show. We're so glad that you're here. Listening to your stories of talking about that, you were talking about in the 70s and in the 80s, that was 40 years ago. And what has happened in the meantime, and where is Iran now compared, and where do you want to see it go? 40 years is a long time.
It certainly is. So we have seen a lot from our own growing up. For me, during the Shah, and then my imprisonment with the regime, and then being able to escape Iran and come land in America. So it was a long journey, and finding purpose again, finding MEK, and start getting involved into this. It hasn't been easy because we had to fight so many things when we were talking about the appeasement policy, and also we say no to war. Because I believe both of them are the wrong policies toward Iran. I can tell you one thing, that in 1997, during Clinton administration, and because of the request of the Iranian regime, they listed MEK in the terrorist list.
Wow.
And that was with no merit, no reason whatsoever, no reason. And so the life had become really, really hard, because suddenly we were called out to be terrorist supporters, for no reason. One day you're fighting this regime, and then suddenly where you live and you picked as a place to have freedom and democracy, suddenly you're limited because they just labeled your organization as the terrorist list. So what MEK did rightfully was to fight back and start a legal process, which it took about 12 years. 12 years of the legal battle with the courts in America, and it wasn't just America; it was in Europe, in England, and in Europe. So one by one, they had to fight to delist them, and going through the court process to see why did you put our name in the list. And there was no reason. They couldn't find any reason, but it took 12 years for delisting them from the terrorist list. So this is what we suffered toward during the appeasement policy. Also during that, and it doesn't matter who sits in the White House. It happened under both Republican and Democrat. So at our basis, because the MEK had a large bases in the borders of Iran and Iraq, which was independent, but at the request of the Iranian regime, in 2001 during the Bush administration, our bases were bombarded, and so we lost 140 people just during that time. So as you can imagine, again, we were under a lot of pressure and suppression, really, by the world. And but we had to go through that. So we fought that too. And a few years later, they moved our people, which was about 3,500 people, in the bases. They moved them to new bases that it was operated by the Iraqi government, and the Iraqi government was heavily influenced by the Iranian regime. During the few attacks that they did toward our bases, we lost another 140 people during this. I think more than 140 people were killed by the Iraqi forces this time. So continuing, just to imagine that we've been fighting for over 47 years in every corner with everything. Not only we continued the fight against the regime, but also we had to fight against the wrong policies that were made toward our organization, who are very independent, and all the income they have, it comes from all of us. We do not get any penny from any government, any other entity. It is self-funded. When we are talking about the grassroots opposition, that's who we are. All of us make ourselves, we pledge ourselves that we are going to each month, whoever, somebody has $1 million, pays $1 million. Somebody has $10, pays $10. It doesn't matter. But we fund our fight against this regime because we want to remain independent. And that's how our leadership is, and how we learned in this, that we have to be we have to be the ones that decide for the future of our opposition, and also for Iran. Independence and sovereignty is the most important thing. And I think after more than 100 years of fight, we deserve it. Iranian people deserve to have a independence, to have a country or a government that decides on the merits of the people, Iranian people, for the Iranian people. And no, Iranian people do not want a nuclear bomb. This is something that this regime wants, and it's very obvious why they want it, because they want to make sure that they have the power and they can continue this kind of negotiation that we are seeing that. But they don't care about people in Iran.
Well, let me ask you this, and then it's sort of an overall question. And Homeira, why don't you start with the answer to this? What do you think? What do people in the United States most misunderstand about what's happening in Iran today?
I think they just focus on the nuclear issue, so they don't know much about the dynamic on the ground. The Iranian people have been fighting for over 120 years, at least that we know, since early 1900 with the constitutional revolution. And they have, collectively as a nation, we have learned from past experiences, from past mistakes, and we've got to this point. So we have enormous learning by experiences. So like the formation of the MEK as an organization with full-time people. See, sometimes I have a professional work that I do, and this is my passion that I do on the side. Sometimes it's hard because you have to manage your work, with your volunteer job that you do on the side. But as a nation, as an organization, they realize that you have to dedicate yourself to fighting. And that's what they did. So the founder of the MEK were all educated people. They were university students back then. With all of them except one was executed by the regime, but they were all in 30s or even younger than that. As Shirin was mentioning, Mehdi Rezai was only 19. So they realized that you have to have an organization, a dedicated organization with a clear passion for freedom and democracy. And they built, it's not just they were incredible people, but they realized that you can educate other people to be as good as you, as good, as believe in democracy, believe in yourself, to fight tyranny and for freedom and democracy. So we have that organization on the ground that withstood the enormous pressure that was placed by the Shahs, by this regime, by even sometimes the Western government, as Shirin was mentioning, putting it in the FTO list. But they were able to clear their name because they are truly fighting for democracy and freedom. And that's the part that we're, mostly misunderstood in the Western, countries, that Iranian people are a bunch of people that somebody needs to rule at them. They don't value the democracy. So if you have a tyrant like Shah was good because he could enforce the interest of the US, and we don't care about what's going on the ground, on human rights. So they're less than, I'm not saying all the people think that way, but these are the misconceptions that, those are Middle Eastern, those are Muslim, they don't know much. No, every human being in this world deserves to be free. This is a God-given rights for freedom, and everybody longs for that freedom, and that's what the Iranian people did from throughout the history in 1979, and when it was like stolen by Khomeini and consolidated power in his just himself, people stood up again. People rose up again, and that's why we had people who joined the resistance. They moved to Iraq, which was in the border of Iran. They actually formed a full military, classic military with tanks and artillery and heavy machinery to take over the country. So that was as I said, their strategy was armed struggle. So they did work for that part. And, just make the story short, those arms, were taken away, and they moved like to Albania, which was good. They were at least they're safe, for a while, or at least they are safe right now. But the mission, the passion for freedom and for democracy is there. And that's why the people in Iran, those people who were executed, the MEK members that we know, their testimony is out. They were singing a song, a revolutionary song, before their execution in prison.
Wow.
This is just enormous. These videos, when it came out, that has even inspired more people. So they were one of the commander. There was a group of 6 that they were executed together for the same supposedly crime. So there were 3 of them in the 30s, so like 32, 33. And then the other 3 were like 59, 66. So in this age group. So that tells you that the generational gap doesn't matter. The people in their 60s, they want the same freedom. The people in 30s, people who were born after the revolution, they want freedom and democracy. And this 33-year-old was actually the commander of the group.
Wow.
So
Homeira, we're going to be getting short on time here. So do you want to just wrap up what you said, and then I want to give Shirin a chance to answer the same question. What do you
Yes.
think people in the United States most misunderstand about what's happening? And kind of keep your answer a little bit short for me.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up. So yeah, mostly is like, the people in Iran have an organized resistance. They have a clear platform, and that platform is inside like a national council of resistance of Iran with the leadership of Maryam Rajavi, which has been endorsed by thousands of parliamentarians all over the world, and that's been in place for over 2 decades. So it's not something new, and they have the capability, the plan, and the people of Iran are willing to topple this regime. So all the ingredients for regime change are there. There is no need for foreign boots. There is no need for foreign money. And the people of Iran can do it. We just have to support them. We have to compel the Iranian regime to stop executions, to give them a chance, the people to come out there and express themselves and take over.
Very good. Very good. Okay.
So if I can add up, it's just that the biggest misconception is that people they don't know that there is opposition that has been fighting for past 47 years, and there is a struggle inside of Iran, and every day we wake up with the execution of a young man for whatever reason that this regime has. 8 of the people, the 22 people, 24 people that have been so far executed in past 40 days were members of MEK, and the rest, there were people who stood up to the regime. They were arrested during the January uprising. And I think some people tell me, oh, so before mullahs, everything was great. No, during the Shah, we had the same issues. I think we talked about it a lot. So we both, Shah and mullahs, both of them are the same. And people have a relative, if you want to compare it, they are living in a very poor condition inside of Iran. Iranian people will rise up again. No doubt about that. And there is a foundation, there is a group that is fighting back. And this group is not asking for any money, boots on the ground, ammunition, or anything like that. We need a National Liberation Army. And this particular organization, MEK and CRI, enjoys of having thousands and thousands of the resistance units inside of Iran. those are the foundation of National Liberation Army. So let's recognize them for any negotiation that we have with this regime. The government must include the human rights situation in Iran and execution part of the deal, part of the negotiation, and penalize the regime for its executions in Iran. Also, they need to start looking at the opposition and National Council of Resistance and include them in all the forming of the policy toward Iran. Because so far we know neither appeasement nor war did do anything for us, and the regime will not change in either way. The regime change will fall only by the Iranian people and forming the National Liberation Army. And when there is a National Liberation Army, then Iranian people are empowered and they are not going to be afraid. And we're going to have the mass rallies and uprising in Iran. It has to be a combination of both. And that's what we need right now. And that's what our lawmakers, policymakers, our governments needs to pay attention. And I think that would be the best way, because either of us, the taxpayer, it doesn't cost us anything, not even a penny. Somebody else does the work, but we form our policy with the understanding of this regime and what is needed to fight this regime.
So we've only got a few minutes left in our conversation here, and boy, I have a lot of questions. I wish we had another 3 hours to talk, but we've only got a few minutes left. So I'll ask you this question, and then just each of you to answer, but try to keep your answers a little bit short for me. What role do you think the international community should be playing right now in helping Iran become a freedom country?
I think that they should.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, Shirin, you go.
Okay, I think they have to stop negotiating and maneuvering around the regime. Believe it or not, UK has not listed IRGC in the terrorist list. They must do it, and they must freeze all the assets of the IRGC people and their other proxy companies that they have came up with for money laundering. They have to stop all that. If you are stopping all those, and if you are freezing all the IRGC assets, then the Iranian regime gets the message that the world is done with this regime and the world is standing up with the Iranian people.
Very good.
However.
Okay, Homeira?
Yeah, I'm saying that, we have to emphasize what's on the ground. I just want to briefly say that 5 days before the whole conflict, 250 armed members of the MEK attacked Khamenei's headquarters in Tehran in a very heavily secured area. And they inflicted casualties on the IRGC, but we didn't hear much about it in the Western news. So we have to emphasize, we have to recognize what's on the ground, and we have to recognize the right of the Iranian people to overthrow and confront this regime. And on the other side, if you want to negotiate with the regime, we know historically the regime is not keeping its promises. It's pretty obvious to us. But if any country wants to have any relationship with the regime, it has to be contingent on halting the regime, halting all the executions in prison, halting torture. So that is a must for any relationship with Iranian regime. And of course, closing all the embassies of the Iranian regime, it's a very good thing to do, because all these embassies are used to plot terror attacks. We've seen it in 2018 when there was a terror attack against the Iranian opposition gathering in Paris, which was hosting a lot of other dignitaries as well. So closing the embassies, recognizing the right of the Iranian people to confront the regime, and halting executions, I think those are the main things that the international community can do.
Well, I think all of those are great suggestions, and I hope that your voices are heard everywhere, because it's really important about, cutting off the head of the snake, which means cutting off the money. cutting off the funds that flow back and forth between these different countries, and to get behind the Iranian people for what you've been fighting for this for a long time. And it's time for that to come about. Tehran is a big, big city, and the rest of the country is pretty rural. So, we're putting, I think, a lot of focus on the wrong end of the stick, that we should be focusing on the rights of the people and what you have been working towards and working so hard with blood, sweat, tears, and even your lives for all of these years to come up with freedom for your country, for the people that are there, for the future of your children and your grandchildren. So I want to thank you both so much for taking a bold stand and standing up and talking about this and getting the information out to Americans, and I'm sure to the rest of the international community. So I really want to thank you so much for being here with us today. I think that we've learned a lot, and there's a lot more that we need to know. So thank you for being vocal, and thank you for being brave and standing up, even in spite of everything that you went through when you were younger, for staying, in the fight for your country and for your heritage, and which is a long, beautiful history. So I want to thank you again for everybody for being here with us today. I want to thank everybody who's joined us here today. Please like and share this. Get this information out to a very wide community. If you're involved in a patriot community or in a community that has something to do with the government, please let them know that there's another side of Iran other than just we can't let them have a nuclear bomb, because I think most of the people there don't want a nuclear bomb anyways. They want to have their lives back and be able to have food, water, shelter, clothing, education, their freedom to religion, all of those different things. So with that, I want to close out with one of my favorite verses from the Bible. I close all of my podcasts with, whether they are live or pre-recorded, which is Romans 12:12. Rejoice in hope, be patient in trouble, and be persistent in prayer. Remember to lean into God. His timeline may not be your timeline, but he's always there with you. I want to see you again tomorrow or the next time at the same place on the Tenpenny Files, 3 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, on AmericaOutloud.news and iHeartRadio and on social media. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day and your week. Goodbye and God bless.